Welcome to this latest episode of the Resilient CISO. In this episode, we welcome Don Baham, CISO and CTO at Rubicon Founders, as well as adjunct instructor at Belmont University. Don, it's great to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me, Harold. Appreciate you reaching out and looking forward to this conversation. Yeah, so I've been in technology and security for quite a while. My current role is, as you mentioned, CISO and CTO at Rubicon Founders, which is a healthcare investment firm here in Nashville, Tennessee. And I've done quite a few different things in technology and security. Started in system administration, found my way to security through pen testing and social engineering, and had a lot of fun doing that. And worked in financial services and healthcare and some other industries, and have had a good career so far within security.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know we have a lot in common there with systems administration background, financial services. And when I think about being in your shoes, I think about having a portfolio, right? Having a lot of different healthcare companies and organizations, looking at different stakeholders. The concept of cyber resilience, applying that into multiple organizations, thinking about this concept and saying, how do I measure this? This isn't a single enterprise per se. I'd love to get your thoughts on how you think about cyber resilience across like a portfolio.
Sure. I think that cyber resilience in general is maybe this newer concept that seems to be getting some more traction lately, just because of all of the challenges and opportunities we've seen within technology and third parties and supply chain and all that, and applying that to an investment firm with multiple portfolio companies, and kind of the remit I have to ensure kind of resiliency across the different funds, and also couple that with a number of our portfolio companies are ground up newco starts. So we build these companies, quite a few of them, from the ground up. That provides some advantages. It's also a lot of chaos, as startups are, but it does provide some advantages in that we can build some of that foundation, that resilient foundation, from the beginning, and we're not necessarily having to come back in and retrofit systems and processes and technologies to be more resilient. So we can take that approach in the beginning in things like our technology architecture, in how we engage third parties, and how we structure those programs and business processes to ensure that they do have some resiliency, at least conceptually thought of. Now, we're also in the constraint of, again, startups. We're scrappy, so we don't necessarily have a huge budget in the beginning to build in a lot of redundancy as far as systems, other technologies, but we can build in redundancy when it comes to the human side of things, how we're going to process something, how we're going to do an action or take an activity and see it to completion for a patient or a customer, by designing offline processes and different things like that, things that we can accommodate for, even if we may not have the budget for full DR technology solutions as well.
Yeah, Don, that's spot on. I think my experience has matched that. It's a double-edged sword. In a startup context, you have the opportunity to lay down this great foundation. Everything starts fresh, and you figure we're not going to have the tech debt. We can build it the right way, but you're also resource constrained. So you're juggling, where do I prioritize? Where do I make the investment? If I can only have one of the 10 things that I would like, which one do I do? So taking a risk-based approach is absolutely essential. And I think that makes perfect sense across a portfolio, looking at, startup and figuring out, where those investment dollars going to go. But that kind of leads me to the next thought here, which is healthcare. It's incredibly high stakes, right? We're talking about bouncing back from an incident where patient care and potentially lives are on the line. Your healthcare background has shaped how you think about resilience, right? And you're thinking about resilience not just prevention, right? That's one of the hallmarks here, is really thinking about what happens after the incident. What am I doing to recover the organization? I'd love to get your perspective, right? How, those unique elements that are healthcare bound, right? That are the stresses and worries of someone in your shoes. How are you thinking about resilience as opposed to, let's say, prevention in some of these organizations?
So I think my background in financial services, specifically in banking, has helped define how I approach that in other industries, including healthcare. I think that, and you've probably seen this as well, Harold, in financial services, um, by and large, they've made progress in financial services that we haven't seen necessarily in healthcare, as far as how we manage technology, how we think about security, resiliency, everything. I mean, 20 plus years ago, I was doing DR exercises for banks, like literally working out of a trailer with satellite connections and uplinks to the core bank. I mean, doing all of those things that were required, by regulatory bodies in the financial services space. That kind of rigor hasn't necessarily, come to healthcare at large. Right, there are a lot of healthcare organizations that are doing a lot of those good things, but by and large, across the industry, we're still lagging behind some of the efforts and maturity that financial services had. So that informs how I go about, looking at that for our portfolio companies, and choosing to, let's say, work on different technologies or different business processes that allow, our portfolio companies to operate without a specific kind of technology stack, and choosing to exercise those on a regular basis. And then also, thinking through from a resiliency and dependency standpoint, how does that affect the firm? From a technology standpoint, we don't have a lot of different pieces that connect back to, let's say, the Rubicon infrastructure, but we do have information flows, right? So we do need to be able to pass information to portfolio companies, retrieve information from that, and make sure those are secure. And so we think through how we're going to accommodate that, what kind of requirements are put on how quickly we need to be able to do that. If something is not available, what are our alternatives, and how are we communicating that to our stakeholders at the portfolio companies, and how they're managing that through that in their management teams. And then how, beyond that, how they collectively produce that evidence or produce that information when it's required, if they are in the midst of, a challenge that's bringing some of their systems or processes offline. So it's not necessarily a one size fits all as well for each portfolio company. You have to go through, think through those unique circumstances, but have open dialogue with each of them, and kind of figure out what works for each one.
Yeah, Don, some points you raised there, spot on. I still identify as a financial services CISO. I spent so much of my career in financial services, and like you, I've seen exercises that we did 20 years ago, 25 years ago in financial services that I still don't see as just industry norms, right?
Right.
Whether we're talking about the way that software is constructed in some of these organizations, the way that you evaluate whether or not you have some baked in resilience into your practices. There is a lot to be learned. There's a lot to apply, and you're applying these lessons, right? The benefit of financial services, right? A special shout out to those of you out there listening that are coming from that background. And, of course, we have tremendous respect to the other verticals and the other industries. But one of the benefits is just we've been at it longer. We've been heavily regulated entities focused on this problem, much longer runway, trying to solve a fundamental problem that I think we all face. And of course, you're facing that in healthcare, and you're working to help bring up and elevate that collective level of play. So let's
doing my
yeah,
best.
exactly. We're all working to fight the good
Yeah.
fight and get organizations to understand why we believe these are critical next steps to get them more mature, get them progressing, right? But that sort of takes us to something that I think we both talk about quite a bit, which is AI. AI is fundamentally changing the world. Opus 4.6 just dropped like 48 hours ago, and within about 48 hours, a new leader, Gemini, Google released DeepMind. Right, so we're seeing tremendous velocity here. As a defender of enterprises, as a cyber defender, I think this is a friend or foe kind of scenario. We both can exploit these capabilities to accelerate who we are, what we can do for an organization. But it also has the potential to introduce new fragility. I'm just curious, how are you seeing it today? What are you seeing as some of the challenges that are confronting organizations, especially when we consider concepts like cyber resilience?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, of course, we can't have a conversation about technology or security without bringing AI into the conversation. So here we go. One, I think just, I'm a security guy at heart. Like, I've been doing security now for a long time. It's interesting to see the reaction, I think, from, I'll just put us all in the same bucket, just security in general. There seems to be a lot of fear still about security or about AI. And I think that's unfortunate. I think that we've got a lot of opportunity with artificial intelligence
Mhm.
in all its many forms. And I think as security professionals, we should be leaning into it as far as not trying to stop it, but let's figure out how we leverage this capability to make us more resilient, to be able to empower the business in a secure way. And I know the tendency can be to take a step back and say, no, not yet. I haven't figured this out. I don't know what exactly we're going to do, so we're just not going to do it. And I think that's the wrong approach with AI. The speed of adoption of AI. I mean, people are just going to work around you. So attempting to stop it or attempting to slow it down to a point where you're frustrating the business, I think is the wrong approach. So that's my soapbox about adoption of it. We need to lean in hard, get our teams leaning in, and how can we leverage this and how can the business leverage this to achieve their goals faster, to differentiate in the market, to whatever it happens to be. So as far as resiliency goes, yes, I think there's there's an opportunity for introducing new technology that could introduce some fragility and lack of resilience in an environment, partly because this is new. We don't know exactly all the time what somebody is doing in the business with AI. I mean, again, a lot of different ways that folks work around controls, right? So what are they introducing in the environment? How are they leveraging pick your AI platform for a business process that you may not be aware of? It's simple, or it's as not simple. It is like, shadow IT. Back in the day, I remember even not that long ago working in a healthcare organization and finding out that, oh, we've got this Salesforce platform that has 200 people in it that we didn't know about somehow, right? So it's like that, but obviously there's differences, and yet we know that folks are bringing in different AI tools to run a business process, create a business process, and there's dependency that happens when we're not aware of it. I think the same rules apply as far as trying to figure out how AI is being leveraged, similar to other shadow IT tools, is relationship building, getting to know folks in procurement, folks in accounting, folks in marketing, like talking to people. What are you guys doing? What are you working on? Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know we were doing that in our environment. And not stopping it, but like, okay, let's talk about it. Interesting. Maybe we can help here. Maybe we can build some resilience around that. Maybe we can introduce the enterprise version of whatever instead of a consumer version. So I think there's ways to address it. And similar to how we've addressed things in the past, the speed at which it's being adopted is probably the biggest challenge here. Not necessarily the fact that we haven't done something like this before, but we're just having to do it a little bit faster.
Well said, Don. I completely agree. I think jumping into, if not the driver's seat, definitely the co-pilot, pun intended, right?
Yeah, nice.
The key steering opportunity comes from being deeply involved in exactly how that organization is embracing this technology, helping to put some guardrails around it. One of the benefits of kind of being, in the industry for quite a while, I think we've been in the industry about the same time, is having seen something like this before with cloud adoption,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Seeing that, hey, organizations, there's this new piece of tech, some are in, some are out, watching a bit from the sidelines, seeing whether or not it really sticks, and then realizing, oh my goodness, there's a mess I have to go clean up,
Mhm.
and figuring out, what do I do now? So one of the key lessons from that is enterprise adoption can be a bit messy. You need to find a way to steer it, and one of the best ways to steer it is to go become an expert in it. Is to go start to drive that and say, you know what, there's some opportunity that we're not really pursuing here. I think also it's massively disruptive to so many industries that as a risk-minded professional, this represents a risk not only in terms of shadow usage, right, and what it
Mhm.
might mean, but fundamentally, are we exploiting this capability to the maximum benefit from a competitive perspective, right? And making sure that we're the operator persona. We're not only a technologist that manages risk, but a true member. It's what I like to call earning the C in CISO, right? It's
Mhm.
an actual seat at the table, but you have to earn that repeatedly. So as we kind of wrap up, I'd love to get your perspective on this because you teach, you speak around the world, you mentor individuals, and there's a growing population of people stepping into the role, stepping up, maybe members of your own leadership team. How would you guide them on the concept of building secure organizations versus like building a resilient organization, right? Like for example, when we stay fully into like the technology persona, where we're deeply focused on how technology works. But I would argue that the resilience construct is really thinking about how the business works, and
Mhm.
the technology is a component added to that. I'd love to get your thoughts on, how you might provide some guidance to people in terms of the world that you see emerging and for those future leaders.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one that I think about, quite often. As you mentioned, I mentor younger professionals that are coming up. Those on my team, those are outside reporting structure, other organizations. I'm involved in several different associations, um, and all that to say, I get the question a lot. Well, like, what should I focus on? Like, I want a career in security. So these are the things I'm thinking about. What do you suggest that I do? And that answer kind of varies depending on the individual. But what I always come back to is, especially early in their security career, even if they're transitioning necessarily something from a technology or system administration background. Um, my career path, probably not by design, really. It just happened. But this is kind of how I provide some guidance for other folks now is do different things. Like figure out, okay, I started in offensive security. And that's just, I was kind of lucky to be able to do that. It was great. But then I did a lot. I did defense. I did risk assessments. I learned how to be an IT auditor. I mean, writing policies and procedures, some really boring stuff, but it was helpful. Understanding technology risk, understanding IT risk, understanding enterprise risk, all of that kind of foundation, uh, one makes you a better professional, but also helps you understand more about how a business operates, right? And it allows you to have some conversation with non-technical folks, especially on the risk side of things. That can translate to financial risk or operational risk, any type of risk that involves resiliency as well. So, getting a well-rounded background and an opportunity to work in different roles, and that sometimes doesn't come easy. Sometimes it can be in a consulting organization, as an example, where you have opportunity to bump around, or it requires moving from company to company. But I definitely would suggest getting a variety of different experiences in the security realm and seeing not only what you like, but also, what don't you like, but you may still want to have an understanding of those capabilities and that kind of role that's necessary in an organization.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you once again, Don. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Great insights. I think those similar backgrounds and experiences. I always find it remarkable how th- those that have been around for a while are going to see the world similarly, regardless of industries and areas they came from. So your insights, I know, are
Yeah.
going to help not only the next generation, but are also going to ring true to so many senior colleagues out there that are listening in. I want to thank you again. I look forward to maybe having you on again in the future.
Appreciate it, Harold. Thank you.